just seems like with things ticking up, it's probably best to be prepared. I was looking at the dashboard today when it finally refreshed, and Schenectady County was at 4.7% positivity rate yesterday.
What's Saratoga County?
Saratoga, 2.7.
That is not good news.
Mm-mm.
Can I
Vaccines on the way.
can I ask you, Ike, because it won't really matter for the meeting, on the chart, you also show reopening phases 5, 6, 7, and 8. Are those ones that Cuomo outlined?
No, this is our own internal reopening plan. Yeah.
Okay. So that phase 4 is not aligned necessarily with the state's phase 4.
That's correct. That's
Right.
correct. And the phase 4 in this chart is green, since that's where we are now in our reopening.
Okay, we're live on our website, live on Facebook, and I'm recording.
Thank you, Don.
We're live?
Live.
Yes.
We're live? Is that what Don said?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I call to order this special meeting of the Saratoga Springs Public Library Board of Trustees. The first order on the item on the agenda is the Cluster Action Initiative Response Plan. That would be the so this is this handout. Yeah. Okay.
It is this one, right?
So that, I'm sorry, it kind of what Katie was referring to, the 5, 6, 7, 8 do not correspond to any state plan, right? Or
That's
any,
correct. So they correspond to phases in our phased reopening plan, which is part of our business reopening safety plan. And then this document will be inserted in that business reopening safety plan.
I have a quick question. Am I taking notes? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Should be, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And so this plan will actually become part of a larger plan. And really the plan part is this sentence down here that says, pursuant to the Cluster Action Initiative, yellow zone. So right now we're at phase 4 of our own internal reopening plan. A yellow zone will move us back a step to phase 3. An orange zone declaration would move us back to phase 2, and a red zone would move us back to phase 1.
and this corresponds to the state.
So you're frozen there a little bit, Frank, but
I'm sorry.
but yes, the Cluster Action Initiative is a state initiative, and so what they're doing, it seems to be, rather than taking the regional approach that they had been with their phased reopening, they're focusing on micro clusters, on smaller geographical areas. So rather than the the multi-county capital district area, they're honing in on, it seems like, zip codes is where they're going. Zip codes and perhaps census tracts.
So I have a question then. So does that mean that we would only, that it's likely that they would, for example, say 12866 is now a yellow zone and we would move back accordingly, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yes. Yep.
So
And
only when it applies to the zip code that we're in.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. You're welcome. And the criteria are a little bit complicated, but It is maintaining, for us, we're in tier 2, which means that we need a 3% test positivity rate, a 3% 14-day average positivity rate for 10 days before we would move into yellow. And then it would be 4% to get into the orange zone and 5% to get into the red zone.
And is that is there an official announcement by the state?
Yes, it's on the Forward New York site. There's all kinds of information about it there.
It does raise that tricky piece of how many zip codes we service for our library.
Right, and
That for our patrons, that it's where the library sits and not who we serve just in the Saratoga region.
correct. And so I don't know what it means for schools, because there are implications for schools as well. So, Greenfield Elementary School is in a different zip code from all of the schools in the city. So I don't know if 12866 went yellow and 12833 didn't, would they leave Greenfield open? I don't know, and I'm glad I don't have to figure that out or worry about that. I feel sorry for anybody who has to, if that's the way they're doing it. But zip code is the thing that seems to come up most often when they talk about it. So county and zip code.
Mm-hmm. So if there aren't other questions, I move to approve the library services reopening phase as outlined here.
Second.
Does anybody want any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
And then the other item on our agenda is this telecommuting policy, which is a requirement of a pandemic operations plan that we are required to have in place. Not immediately, but the sooner the better. If it's seeming like we may get to a place where more people may have to work from home again. The required date by which we need to have it approved as part of a larger plan is not till April. But as I said, today, with Schenectady ticking up to 4.7 and Saratoga ticking up to 2.7, it's seeming like it's likely that we'll have to implement this policy.
This come over from Bon Chenik?
Yes, Tara put a lot of effort into it. We poured over it as a management team. It got sent back to Bon Chenik. Tara put a lot more effort into it, and then we have gone back over it as a management team.
So it looks like that the telecommuting, the conditions would be in a written agreement. There's going to be a written telecommuting agreement?
Yep. So the intent here was to create a policy that would be used even in regular times. So this would be added to our larger employee handbook. It would also serve to satisfy the need for inclusion in the pandemic response plan that's needed by April. So that's why this particular policy as written speaks to not just emergent need, but also for the potential for regular telecommuting arrangements. From a practical sense and a logistical sense, I foresee a written telecommuting agreement being appropriate for someone who applies for a regular telecommuting sort of arrangement. but that a written agreement for individuals would be less necessary for occasional or emergency telecommuting. Rather that employees would, just like with any other policy updates, get a copy of this policy, acknowledge receipt and understanding of it, and that would essentially suffice to convey our expectations for employee performance if they were to have to en masse or individually go to a remote work sort of situation. So if you'll remember, we did have work from home and remote work happening when the pandemic first got underway. And we had a board resolution, but we really didn't lay out the specifics of expectations, logistics, timekeeping, record keeping, and so forth. So this policy aims to solidify a lot of those details. And like I said, is intended to become part of the regular employee handbook, but then also be cross-referenced for our pandemic response plan. So it satisfies kind of two needs.
Okay. So my only, I guess, on page 2, it talks about eligibility. And it says before entering into any telecommuting agreement. You're not, when you say that, you're not contemplating a written agreement, I assume.
You know, perhaps in that paragraph, agreement could be replaced with arrangement, but telecommunicating agreement, capital T, capital A, would likely be something that we would get in writing for the person who submits an application for regular ongoing telecommuting, which we don't currently have, but given the way things are changing, we might evolve to have, or a position in the future might be one that is a telecommuting one.
So for those, so perhaps you want to change that to arrangement, because I think all those things you have listed, you know, suitability, responsibilities would apply in either scenario, right?
Agreed, yes.
Other than that, I think you're very thorough. You know, it's a good idea to promulgate this now. Does anybody have any questions about it?
Frank, do you want a formal amendment with your language replacement, or can we just adopt the policy with the understanding that that replacement will take place?
I think we could understand.
I'm sorry, I didn't. You were cutting off.
I'm sorry, I'm not in my usual location. I think, Terry, we could adopt it with the understanding that that change that I just spoke of would take place. Tara, you think that's all right as well, I assume?
I do. I don't want to speak for everybody, so if Ike and others want to chime in too.
Yeah, no, I think it is a good a good edit. I think it makes sense.
So are you proposing a motion, Mr. Diggory?
Well, I was just asking procedurally what we're doing. I'm happy to propose that we adopt the policy. Do you want me to propose amendment first, or are we just going by understanding?
I think we can just go by that understanding.
Yeah. Okay. So I move adoption of this policy with the understanding of that one change of language.
I second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion's carried. It's adopted. Okay, is there anything, is that it, Ike?
That's it for this meeting, and I really appreciate your time on such short notice.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Thanksgiving.
Have a great holiday, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Yes.
everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.